The in-between. Allow yourself to look for the quiet, to stop answering echoes that were never meant for you. If you're broken, be broken. But don't be afraid to keep living anyway. There's still beauty here, still warmth, still hope. Not perfect, just real. Chapter 1. Rebecca. No grief, no rage, just the quiet certainty that it was time to go. There was no breakdown, no dramatic ending. She'd simply reached the end of herself. It wasn't some dramatic unraveling, the kind that leaves mascara stains on white pillowcases or voicemails begging someone to understand. It was a decision, quietly made and gently held. If she was really honest, it was one she'd been circling for years. Like a shoreline she wasn't quite ready to step off of, until now. She arrived with a single weekend bag, a few old photo albums, and a worn leather notebook zipped into the lining. Inside the notebook were draft letters. Not a confession, not a plea, just the facts, laid out plainly. She's had a great life, one she remembers with so much love and fondness. She didn't want to burden anyone with a goodbye. Her room faced the lake. 3rd floor, wide balcony, the kind of view that made you believe in second chances, or other lives, softer ones, where things didn't hurt so much. If she were someone else, she might have taken a picture, framed it, held on. Instead, she stood in the doorway, one hand resting on the worn brass knob of the French doors, like she was waiting for permission to move. The sky outside had turned to velvet dusk, muted gold melting into rose, with the first hint of indigo pooling along the tree line. The lake held the colors like a secret. The air was thick with wood smoke and fallen leaves. Autumn, always her favorite. And this one would be her last. She let her breath go slow, measured, practiced. 7 days. That's what she'd allowed herself. A full week to make peace with the weight of it. To write the letter and rewrite it until it stopped sounding like a confession and started sounding like a conclusion. No guilt, no loose ends, just quiet. She didn't want anyone left wondering why. She checked in with her real name, credit card on file, room confirmation in her inbox. There was no need for secrecy. No one knew she had left. No one would be coming. Her kids were grown now, busy with their own lives. They were good kids, steady, kind. Better than she deserved, maybe, but exactly who she'd hoped they'd become. Reed and Nicole, both doctors now, were running a private clinic together, just like their father once dreamed. Back when teething babies and overdue bills ruled their nights, Tom used to talk about a future like this. He would have been proud. God, he would have lived for it. Making awful prescription puns over dinner, texting them ridiculous medical memes at 2 a.m. Rebecca could almost see it. The 3 of them working side by side, Tom semi-retired but still meddling, already planning their next adventure abroad. She smiled softly at the thought. The kids had built full, demanding, beautiful lives. And that was the point, wasn't it? You raise them, love them so big it wrecks you, and then you let them go. But she hadn't imagined letting go would leave this much silence. This chapter was supposed to include Tom. Saturday mornings tangled in the sheets. Sundays spent lingering over coffee, talking about the kids and all the ways they'd made them proud. Maybe grandkids. Maybe not. It wouldn't have mattered, as long as he was there. But he wasn't. And she was. Still standing. Still breathing. Barely. Rebecca's kids lived just 6 houses apart from each other, and 4 provinces away from Rebecca. They share passwords, groceries, inside jokes, and a kind of grief that welded them into something stronger. It wasn't always like that. As kids, they bickered like it was their full-time job. But after Tom died, they clung to each other like life rafts, tight and unspoken, afraid that letting go might pull them under. While they held on to each other, Rebecca quietly disappeared behind them. Not all at once. Grief is sneakier than that. It steals you in pieces. A memory here, a dream there. Until one day you're not sure who's left. That's what happens when you lose the love of your life. Time doesn't move on. It just pauses around you, silent and cruel, while the rest of the world forgets to wait. Tom had been her home, her compass, her every plan whispered under a starlit sky. And when he was gone, those plans unraveled like thread, until all she had left were the remnants. The house, the wedding band, the ache. She tried, God, she tried to find her footing. There were school lunches to pack, homework to check, teeth to brush, and nightmares to soothe. Grief didn't give her space to fall apart, not with two young hearts watching her every move, needing her to be okay when she barely remembered how. She smiled through spelling tests and parent-teacher nights, learned how to fix a leaky faucet, and tried not to cry when Tom's voice still echoed from old home videos. She did it all, alone, because they needed her. But the truth, the one she never dared to say out loud, was that the ghost of who she used to be was never really enough. She got up every morning and made the breakfasts, signed the permission slips, clapped at school assemblies with tear-smudged mascara and a smile that fooled everyone but herself. She went through the motions like a woman moving underwater, slow, heavy, blurred at the edges. No matter how hard she tried to stay present, a part of her never made it out of that hospital room. It died with Tom. The full version of Rebecca, the one who laughed without restraint, who dreamed in color, who believed in forever, vanished the day he did. What remained was survival, quiet, dutiful, hollow at the edges. And she wore it like armor, because they're two grieving children who needed more than what was left of her, so she gave them everything she had, even if it wasn't enough. And now, all these years later, watching them thrive, grown, capable, living the life she fought to give them, it should have felt like peace. But sometimes, when the calls ended and the silence crept back in, all she felt was the echo of everything she'd lost to get them there. She was proud, so proud, but somewhere in the knowing that they were okay was the ache that she wasn't, and maybe never would be. They had each other, and she had the quiet. Rebecca used to joke that if they would have to marry siblings, they'd need spouses who were emotionally secure and wildly patient, because no one else would understand the special bond they had. They'd laugh at that, genuinely. They laughed more than they cried. That was the gift their father had given them. He'd always made her laugh, too. Not the polite kind, not the dinner party chuckle she learned to fake over the years, but the kind that knocked the wind out of her. The kind that made her forget bills, carpools, the burn mark on the new towel. That morning, God, that morning, he'd spilled coffee on his dress shirt. Late again, he yanked off the shirt dramatically like he was on a runway, did a twirl and a runway strut through the kitchen, and asked if she thought HR would object to his dad bod in business casual. She'd laughed so hard she choked on her toast. Later that day, he was gone. A phone call, a blur. Heart attack, sudden, immediate. By the time she reached the ER, he wasn't even there anymore. Just the shell of him, still warm, still hers, but not there. She'd pressed her forehead to his chest, like if she held still long enough, she could will him back. Like the weight of her love could restart his heart. But love doesn't always win. No one talks about that part. Now, the memory clung to her like mist off the lake. He'd been the axis her whole life spun around, and when he left, everything just kept spinning. Only now, she wasn't sure where the center was anymore. For a while, she faked it. She got the kids to school, paid the bills, answered calls from his old patients who still needed to believe in something steady. Then she failed at it, collapsed in a grocery store parking lot, forgot birthdays, burned dinner 3 nights in a row, and didn't notice until the smoke alarm screamed. Then she rebuilt, piece by piece. Not into who she was before. She'd never find that woman again. But into someone functional enough to keep going. And now, she was just tired. Not the kind of tired sleep can fix. Not even the kind a glass of wine, a hot bath, and a good cry could touch. Though Lord knows she'd tried all 3, repeatedly, sometimes in that order. This was a bone-deep tired, a marrow-level fatigue. The kind that whispered, "You've done enough, sweetheart. Go lie down." Forever. It lived in the quiet sighs she made while scrubbing dishes for people who thought forks magically washed themselves. In the voicemail from her daughter she never returned, something about a gala or a TED Talk or whatever her calendar vomited up that week. The treadmill in the basement mocked her silently. It had gathered more dust than steps, parked beside the stack of books she once told herself she'd read when life slowed down. It hit hardest in the yogurt aisle, looking at the rows of Greek, Icelandic, probiotic, fat-free, full-fat, fruit on the bottom, drama queens, and realizing she didn't even know what she liked anymore. Just what Reed and Nicole had screamed over when they were kids. Strawberry versus vanilla. Full custody level arguments. It was in the birthdays she hosted, solo, champagne, cupcakes, and enough candles to require a fire extinguisher. In the holidays, she survived with too much charcuterie and not enough serotonin. It was in every well-meaning, tone-deaf comment, "You're so strong," like she chose grief as her superpower. Like resilience didn't come with a side of insomnia, eye bags, and rage cleaning. It was in the way she still touched the space where her wedding ring used to live. Not with sadness, just habit, muscle memory from a previous life. And now, it was in the breath she took out on the balcony. Long, steady, not exactly dramatic despite what her therapist might have expected. This wasn't a breakdown. It was quieter than that, smaller, almost neat. A final checkbox on a long list of emotional tasks she'd been working through for years. She'd made the decision weeks ago, clear-headed, no drama, no goodbyes, no explanations. She was tired of taping herself back together like some half-finished DIY project no one else had the tools or the interest to fix. She wasn't bitter, not really, just realistic. She wasn't broken either, not anymore. She was simply done. And honestly, there was a strange kind of peace in that. She stepped out onto the balcony and eased into the Adirondack chair. It creaked slightly beneath her. The sky was bleeding into early dusk, all rose gold haze and gentle stillness. She watched the lake, where the early evening sunlight danced like glitter over the waves. A group of kids, maybe 10, 11, were out jumping them, shrieking each time the water smacked their legs or splashed high enough to soak their shirts. One wiped out dramatically, then popped back up with arms flung in victory, the universal language of, "Did you see that?" And suddenly, it wasn't them she was watching anymore. It was Reed, his 2 big swim trunks sagging with water, wiping his nose on his arm, yelling, "Watch this, Mom." It was Nicole, tiny and determined, standing hip-deep and daring the waves to knock her over. It was her husband, laughing beside her, snapping pictures and offering a slow clap when one of them did something brave or ridiculous. She remembered chasing flip-flops that floated away, sand in the peanut butter sandwiches, sun-warmed towels that smelled like lake water and sunscreen. That one summer, Nicole brought her stuffed rabbit to the shoreline and insisted it needed a floaty. It felt like last year and a million years ago all at the same time. It now felt like someone else's life. She blinked, and the kids out there now were strangers. She wasn't the mom with snacks and backup towels anymore. She wasn't needed like that. Not in a way that filled the day or justified the camera rolls. Now she was the woman on the balcony with a glass of wine and a heart full of ghosts. Not sad, not bitter, just grateful it happened, and quietly wrecked that it was over. She curled her fingers around the stem of her wine glass. Half full, dark and soft. She watched the light catch on the rim and let herself exhale. Tomorrow she'd start writing the letters. To Reed, to Nicole, to the few friends who still texted. She didn't want to leave guilt behind, just context. She didn't want anyone wondering if they missed the signs. They didn't. There weren't any. She had simply reached her end. Tonight, she wouldn't think about the notebook. She wouldn't think about how she planned to walk into the lake or which pills to take. She wouldn't rehearse her exit. Tonight, she would just breathe. No tears, no second thoughts, no regrets. Just the quiet of the lake and the soft, familiar hush of a world that hadn't noticed she was slipping away.